The snow was falling harder than usual that evening, drifting through the air like pieces of torn silver paper, swirling around the glowing lights of the winter market. People brushed past one another, wrapped in layers of warm clothing, their laughter echoing through the cold air. But in the middle of all that beauty, in the very center of the lively scene, a moment was quietly unfolding, one that would break a man open, confronting everything he thought he knew about generosity, love, and what it truly meant to save someone. The billionaire, Adrian Hale, had never planned on stopping there. He had intended only to walk through as a distraction, something to pull his mind away from the board meetings, legal documents, and endless financial decisions waiting for him the next day. But fate had a strange way of leading a soul exactly where it needed to be. On that snowy evening, it guided him to a small girl sitting in a wheelchair, bundled in a pink jacket and knit beanie, her cheeks flushed from the cold. And it guided him to the words she would whisper, words so gentle, so pure, yet so devastating that they would bring his entire world to a standstill. If you're watching this and believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of human connection, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this deserve to reach every heart they can. Adrian had money, more than he could ever spend, but what he didn't have was peace, or warmth, or a sense of being needed beyond his wealth. For months, he had been searching for something to fill the hollow spaces inside him, the ones no mansion or private jet could cure. He thought perhaps helping someone, giving back in some way, might bring him closer to a purpose he'd lost long ago. And then he saw her. The little girl's hands were wrapped around a small cup of hot chocolate. Her fingers were tiny, shaking lightly from the cold. But there was something more, something far deeper than physical discomfort. Her eyes held a kind of quiet strength, the kind that came from enduring things far greater than her age should ever allowed. She looked up at Adrian when he approached, and in that brief exchange of gazes, an unspoken understanding flickered between them. He crouched down in front of her, trying to warm his breath with a smile he hadn't used in a long time. He didn't even know what he wanted to say to her at first, only that something had pulled him toward her, as if the universe itself had gently placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Here, stop here." The winter market buzzed with music and chatter, but as Adrian looked into the girl's eyes, he heard none of it. The world blurred into soft shapes of light behind her, and for once he felt truly grounded. Her wheelchair was decorated with colorful stickers, little cartoon characters, bright stars, smiling suns. A pink ribbon hung from the handle, fluttering whenever a gust of cold wind passed. It was obvious someone had put effort, love, into making the chair feel less like a burden and more like a companion. Adrian sensed that whoever that was had given the girl not just mobility but hope. For several long, thoughtful moments, he simply watched her observe the snowfall. She looked at it the way children look at magic, with awe deep enough to remind adults of miracles they had forgotten. Adrian's heart tightened a little. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, barely louder than the whispering snow around them. He introduced himself, told her she looked warm and cozy in her pink jacket, tried to make her laugh, and she did a small, timid laugh that sounded like bells. With each sound, he felt something inside him ease. It wasn't long before he learned her name, Lily. And her world, her real world, was nothing like the sparkling winter market. Her father had passed away years ago. Her mother worked multiple jobs, barely keeping them afloat. The medical bills, therapy sessions, and hospital visits had pulled them into a place darker and heavier than any child should ever have to sit in. And yet Lily spoke about her mother with the kind of admiration that made Adrian's chest tighten. She described her mother's sacrifices, how she would skip meals so Lily could have hers, how she'd walk through storms instead of taking a bus to save money, how she stayed awake through nights sewing clothes for neighbors just to earn a little extra. There was no resentment in Lily's voice, only love. Adrian had listened silently, almost painfully. He had come from hardship once too, long before wealth had changed his life. He knew what it felt like to watch a loved one drown under responsibilities too heavy to carry. For the first time in years, he felt his heart beating with a purpose he had forgotten. He knew then what he wanted to do. He wanted to adopt her, to give her a home, security, medical care, everything she deserved, everything she had been denied, simply because life had been cruel to the wrong people. But when he gently, almost hopefully, asked her if she would like that, if she would want to live in his warm home, go to a good school, have a room full of toys, a life free from struggle, her response shattered everything. The snow continued falling, coating her beanie in soft white flakes. The lights glowed behind her like stars, and she looked up at him with eyes full of something far older than childhood. That's when she said it. "I'm not the one who needs saving." The words were spoken softly, but they hit harder than any storm. Adrian didn't understand at first. He blinked, frozen, Unable to process how calmly she had said it, how sure she sounded, Lily explained to him in her small, steady voice that she would be okay, that she had learned to live with her wheelchair. She had learned to find joy in small things, to appreciate moments, to dream despite everything. But her mother was breaking. And Lily had watched her crumble quietly, piece by piece, thinking no one saw. Lily told him her mother was the strongest person she knew. But even the strongest could break when they carried everything alone. She did not want a life of luxury for herself. She did not want a mansion or new toys or fancy clothes. She wanted help for her mother, and at that moment, Adrian felt something inside him shift, something deep, something silent. For years, he had believed charity meant giving money, offering opportunities, providing comfort. He had never considered that sometimes the greatest act of mercy was to lift a burden from the one who carried it, not the one who appeared most fragile. He looked around the market, the lights blurring into a soft haze as his breath caught in his throat. He had never heard anything so selfless, so painfully beautiful, from anyone, much less a little girl with trembling fingers and snow in her hair. As Lily spoke, the truth threaded through every word. She didn't fear her own hardship. She feared what it was doing to the woman she loved most. And that truth pierced him. Adrian realized then that he had been so focused on trying to erase her visible suffering that he had almost overlooked the invisible suffering of someone else, the mother quietly holding the sky over her daughter's world. He knew what he had to do. The next day, Adrian visited Lily's home. It was a small, dim apartment with peeling wallpaper and a broken heater. Her mother, worn and exhausted, tried to stand straight and smile despite her trembling hands. She apologized for the mess, even though everything was tidy. She apologized for the cold, even though she couldn't afford warmth. She apologized simply for existing in hardship. Adrian's heart cracked again. He offered her a job, a career, a position in his company tailored to her strengths. Flexible hours, full medical coverage for her and Lily, a salary that would wipe away every debt they had ever accumulated. And beyond that, he offered support, real support. Chance to breathe again. Lily's mother cried, the sound raw and trembling, as if someone had finally lifted the mountain off her shoulders, and Adrian understood why Lily had said what she said. Saving the mother was, in truth, saving both of them. From that moment on, their lives began to change, not in the overwhelming way riches often promised, but in a gentle, steady, healing way. Lily got the best medical care. Her mother regained her strength. Adrian visited often, not because he felt obligated, but because he felt drawn to the warmth that their little home radiated. Slowly, the hollow spaces in his life began to fill not with wealth, but with belonging. Years later, when Lily took her first steps with the help of new therapy and support, it was her mother's hand she reached for, with tears streaming down her cheeks. But it was Adrian standing on the other side, cheering with pride and gratitude for having been allowed into their lives. And it all began with a little girl in a pink jacket, sitting in a wheelchair, under falling snow, whispering the truth that would change everything. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep bringing meaningful stories to the world. Special request: before the story ends, comment below. Kindness saves lives. Sometimes, the greatest heroes are the ones fighting battles no one sees. Sometimes, the ones who seem the smallest are the ones who open the biggest doors. And sometimes, the person who needs saving isn't the one we expect.